There's a moment in every person's life when they stop and ask, why do some people succeed while others fail? Why do certain individuals seem to turn their dreams into reality while others are left behind, trapped in a cycle of frustration and regret? Napoleon Hill asked that same question more than a century ago, and he dedicated his life to finding the answer. But what he discovered wasn't a formula made of luck, connections, or wealth. It was something deeper, a hidden power within the human mind. A power so subtle that most people never realize it exists, yet so strong it can change the course of an entire life. That power, Hill revealed, is thought. The human thought, when mixed with desire, faith, and persistence, becomes an unstoppable creative force. It's the foundation of his timeless message that whatever the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve. Napoleon Hill was not born into wealth or privilege. He came into the world in 1883, deep in the rugged hills of Virginia. His early life was filled with poverty and hardship. But those struggles planted a fire inside him, a relentless curiosity to understand why success seemed to favor some while evading others. As a young journalist, Hill was given an assignment that would change everything, to interview the legendary industrialist Andrew Carnegie, one of the richest men of his time. Carnegie saw something in Hill, a sharp mind and a hunger for truth. During their conversation, Carnegie shared a challenge that would define Hill's life. He told him that success is not an accident. It's a science. There are laws that govern achievement, just as there are laws that govern gravity or electricity. But these laws were hidden within the minds of successful people, and if Hill could uncover and organize them, he could create a philosophy that would help millions. Carnegie then offered Hill an extraordinary opportunity to dedicate 20 years of his life studying the world's most successful men and women, learning their habits, their thoughts, their psychology. But there was a catch. Carnegie wouldn't pay him a cent. Hill had to do it on faith alone. And Hill accepted. What followed was one of the most remarkable journeys in the history of personal development. Hill interviewed over 500 of the most successful individuals of his era: Thomas Edison, Henry Ford, Alexander Graham Bell, Theodore Roosevelt, and many others. He analyzed their failures, their triumphs, and their mindset. After 2 decades of study, he discovered something profound. Every single one of them, no matter how different their background or talent, shared one common factor: they believed. They believed in their vision long before it existed in reality. This became the foundation of Think and Grow Rich, published in 1937, a book that would go on to inspire millions and shape the personal development movement itself. But to truly understand Hill's timeless secret, we have to look beyond the words, into the psychology that made it all work. The first key to Hill's philosophy is desire. Not wishful thinking, not vague hopes, but a burning desire so intense it consumes your mind. Hill wrote that all achievement begins with desire. Without it, there is no drive, no persistence, no energy to overcome obstacles. But with it, the impossible becomes negotiable. He described desire as a mental magnet. When you fix your mind on a clear goal, your thoughts begin to attract ideas, people, and opportunities that align with it. This is not mystical, it's psychological. Your subconscious mind becomes tuned like a radio to the frequency of your dominant thoughts. You begin to notice what you once ignored, to act on chances others overlook. Desire sharpens perception. It gives meaning to effort. It transforms struggle into purpose. But desire alone is not enough. The second key is belief, or what Hill called faith. Faith is the mental state that turns desire into action. It's the emotional conviction that what you seek is already yours in potential form. When you truly believe in your vision, your mind works like a builder following a blueprint. It constructs reality according to your belief. Hill understood what modern neuroscience now confirms, that belief changes behavior, and behavior shapes results. When you believe deeply, you act with confidence. You persist longer. You take risks. You radiate certainty, and people respond to that energy. But when you doubt, you hesitate. You send mixed signals to your subconscious mind and to the world around you. In that hesitation, opportunity fades. That's why Hill urged readers to repeat affirmations, not as superstition, but as psychological conditioning. Every repetition imprints belief deeper into the subconscious until faith replaces fear. Because, as Hill wrote, faith is the only known antidote for failure. The third key is autosuggestion, the process of influencing your own subconscious through repeated thought. Hill believed that the subconscious mind is like fertile soil. Whatever thoughts you plant in it, whether positive or negative, will grow into reality. Most people, he said, plant weeds, fear, doubt, and limitation. But those who deliberately plant seeds of success eventually harvest it. Hill's method was simple yet powerful. Visualize your goal daily. Speak it aloud. Feel it as if it already exists. Let that image dominate your inner world. Over time, your subconscious mind begins to act like a compass, directing your actions toward that image without conscious struggle. What began as thought becomes habit, then action, then achievement. And yet, Hill never said it was easy. He knew the path to success was lined with obstacles, rejection, and failure. That's why he emphasized the fourth key, persistence. In his interviews, he found that persistence was the defining trait separating the successful from the defeated. When others gave up after failure, the successful ones adapted, learned, and pressed forward. Thomas Edison famously failed thousands of times before inventing the light bulb. When asked about it, he said he didn't fail, he discovered thousands of ways that didn't work. That mindset, persistence in the face of defeat, is what Hill called sustained faith. It's the refusal to surrender your vision to temporary setbacks. But here's where Hill's philosophy becomes truly psychological. He realized that failure is not the opposite of success, it's part of the process. Each setback is a test designed to strengthen desire and clarify purpose. Those who interpret failure as final never reach their goal. Those who see it as feedback evolve until success becomes inevitable. Hill also revealed another vital principle, the mastermind. He discovered that when two or more people align in harmony toward a shared goal, they create a third, invisible force, a collective intelligence greater than the sum of their minds. This mastermind energy multiplies creativity, motivation, and accountability. In modern terms, it's the psychology of synergy. Surround yourself with people who challenge, support, and elevate you, and your own potential expands. But beneath all these techniques lies Hill's greatest insight: the mind is both the cause and the cure of our circumstances. Poverty and wealth, success and failure, they begin in thought. Not every poor person is lazy, and not every rich person is wise, but Hill argued that mindset determines meaning. The difference between a victim and a visionary is not the situation, but interpretation. Hill wrote during the Great Depression, when millions were hopeless. Yet he dared to tell people that wealth begins in the mind. To many, that sounded insane, but he wasn't talking about money alone. He was talking about richness of thought, confidence, imagination, self-belief. The kind of inner wealth that eventually manifests as outer success. He understood something profound about human nature: we don't get what we want, we get what we expect. The world mirrors our internal state. If you expect failure, you subconsciously act in ways that bring it about. If you expect success, you create opportunities to make it real. The subconscious is impartial, it simply obeys your dominant thoughts. That's why Hill warned so strongly against fear. He called fear the greatest enemy of mankind. Fear paralyzes desire, distorts belief, and sabotages persistence. It makes the mind fixate on obstacles instead of possibilities. And since the subconscious acts on whatever it's given, fear creates failure as surely as faith creates success. To conquer fear, Hill taught the discipline of focus. He said, "Set your mind on a definite goal and observe how quickly the world stands aside to let you pass." In other words, clarity is power. The mind that knows what it wants moves with purpose, while the scattered mind wastes energy. Most people never succeed because they never decide, they drift, reacting to life instead of directing it. Hill called this condition drifting, living without purpose or plan, letting circumstances dictate destiny. His later book, Outwitting the Devil, portrayed this as the devil's greatest tool, keeping people too distracted, too doubtful, too lazy to think independently. The cure, Hill said, was definiteness of purpose. To decide what you want, commit to it fully, and refuse to let external noise derail your internal mission. Hill wrote during the Great Depression, when millions were hopeless. Yet he dared to tell people that wealth begins in the mind. To many, that sounded insane, but he wasn't talking about money alone. He was talking about richness of thought, confidence, imagination, self-belief. The kind of inner wealth that eventually manifests as outer success. He understood something profound about human nature: we don't get what we want, we get what we expect. The world mirrors our internal state. If you expect failure, you subconsciously act in ways that bring it about. If you expect success, you create opportunities to make it real. The subconscious is impartial, it simply obeys your dominant thoughts. That's why Hill warned so strongly against fear. He called fear the greatest enemy of mankind. Fear paralyzes desire, distorts belief, and sabotages persistence. It makes the mind fixate on obstacles instead of possibilities. And since the subconscious acts on whatever it's given, fear creates failure as surely as faith creates success. To conquer fear, Hill taught the discipline of focus. He said, "Set your mind on a definite goal and observe how quickly the world stands aside to let you pass." In other words, clarity is power. The mind that knows what it wants moves with purpose, while the scattered mind wastes energy. Most people never succeed because they never decide, they drift, reacting to life instead of directing it. Hill called this condition drifting, living without purpose or plan, letting circumstances dictate destiny. His later book, Outwitting the Devil, portrayed this as the devil's greatest tool, keeping people too distracted, too doubtful, too lazy to think independently. The cure, Hill said, was definiteness of purpose. To decide what you want, commit to it fully, and refuse to let external noise derail your internal mission. But perhaps the most misunderstood part of Hill's philosophy is the word rich. He never equated richness solely with money. To him, true wealth was freedom, freedom of thought, freedom of time, freedom of spirit. Money was just one manifestation of that freedom. A rich life, Hill wrote, is one lived with purpose, service, and peace of mind. He believed the ultimate goal of success was not luxury, but growth, the evolution of the self. When you learn to control your mind, you control your world. That, to Hill, was the highest achievement. Now imagine how radical this idea was in the 1930s, a time when people believed their fate was controlled by banks, politics, or luck. Hill was telling them that power was internal, not external. That every human being, regardless of background, could shape their future through mental discipline. It's no wonder Think and Grow Rich became one of the best-selling books of all time. Its message transcended economics. It became a philosophy of self-mastery. And yet, even today, many misunderstand it. They read the title and think it's about material greed. But Hill's message is spiritual and psychological, not financial. He used money as a metaphor for creation. Rich meant realizing your potential. Grow meant transforming thought into reality. Think meant using your mind consciously instead of drifting through life. The truth behind Hill's timeless secret is that success is not granted, it's generated. Every invention, business, or movement begins in the same place, the human mind. The great achievers of history are those who disciplined that mind, who refused to let fear, doubt, or distraction hijack their imagination. Hill often said, "Your only limitation is the one you set up in your own mind." That single sentence holds the essence of personal freedom. If your limits are mental, your liberation must be too. And this is where modern psychology validates Hill's ideas. Today, neuroscience shows that focused thoughts reshape neural pathways. Visualization activates the same brain regions as real experience. Affirmations rewire emotional patterns. The law of attraction Hill described is not magic, it's neuroplasticity in action. The brain literally builds itself around your dominant thoughts. But Hill went further, he tied psychology to morality. He believed that wealth gained without integrity would destroy its possessor. He wrote that greed, dishonesty, and selfishness corrode the very mind that creates them. True success, he said, must serve others as well as oneself. Otherwise, it collapses under its own emptiness. He often quoted Emerson, "Every man's task is his life preserver." In other words, find the work that expresses your spirit, and success will follow naturally. Money, fame, and recognition are side effects, not goals. The real goal is mastery of self. So, what is Napoleon Hill's timeless secret? It's not a trick or a formula. It's a way of thinking, a conscious alignment of thought, belief, and action toward a definite purpose. It's understanding that your outer world mirrors your inner state. That your mind, when disciplined by faith and fueled by desire, becomes a creative instrument capable of transforming reality. But Hill also knew the cost. To think independently, to reject fear, doubt, and conformity, requires courage. Most people prefer comfort over growth. They'd rather drift than direct. And so they live lives of quiet resignation, wondering why fortune favors others. Hill's message was an invitation to break that pattern, to awaken the sleeping giant of thought and claim responsibility for one's destiny. And this message remains as urgent now as it was in 1937. In an age of distraction, where attention is the new currency, Napoleon Hill's wisdom is a reminder that focus is power. In a world obsessed with external success, he reminds us that the true battlefield is internal. So, when you read Think and Grow Rich, don't just look for money. Look for mastery. Don't just think to get rich, think to grow wise, to grow resilient, to grow free. Hill's philosophy is not about having more, it's about becoming more. Every dream begins with a thought. Every revolution begins in the mind of one person who refused to accept limitations. That person could be you. Hill's life itself proved the principle he taught, that faith, persistence, and purpose can turn a poor boy from the hills of Virginia into a man who changed how the world understands success. The truth is, Napoleon Hill didn't teach people how to make money. He taught them how to make meaning. He showed that wealth is not in the bank, it's in the mind. That's why his secret has survived generations, because it's not about economics, but evolution. To think and grow rich is to realize that your thoughts are creative energy, that your beliefs are blueprints, and that your actions are the bridge between imagination and reality. It's the psychology of becoming, the art of turning invisible ideas into visible success. And that's Napoleon Hill's timeless secret, not a formula to chase wealth, but a philosophy to awaken greatness. The power was never outside you. It was always in your mind, waiting to be believed in, disciplined, and released into the world.